Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon to those of you who are in Europe. I'm Dick Morningstar. I'm the founding chairman of the Global Energy Center here at the Atlantic Council. And I couldn't be happier to be with you this morning for a program on the challenges and opportunities of Poland's energy transition with my friend Michał Kurtyka, who is Poland's first minister of climate and the environment. So we're going to have an hour conversation today. We'll talk between ourselves maybe for the first half hour or so, and then open it up to questions and answers from the audience. This is a public event and is on the record. So again, I'm really looking forward to this, and it's good to see you. You know, it's interesting, Mr. Minister. We've known each other for some years. I don't know that I've ever really looked at your biography, and I read it. I actually read it this morning, and it's really very impressive. I didn't realize that you were both a scientist and an economist, and was very impressed with your knowledge and experience in the area of quantum optics and things such as that. And then, of course, we knew each other when you were state secretary in the Ministry of Energy. Also very much involved in the accession negotiations to the EU going back some years. So a very impressive biography. And I might also add that, frankly, I can't imagine a much harder job than the job that you have right now in Poland, dealing with these issues. I think Poland is in a very special situation, given its historic reliance on coal, on how to bring into balance environmental considerations with socioeconomic considerations, how to deal with a just transition. I can't imagine a tougher environmental job than the one you have. So maybe it would be good to start our conversation, and let's start off with that. How do you see what's necessary for a balance, and how Poland deals with these issues, given that coal is still 74%, last I saw anyway, of the Polish power industry, a huge percentage also of the coal generation in Europe as a whole. How do you meet the needs of the population and still accomplish what will be necessary with respect to climate goals?
Ambassador, thank you very much, first of all, for your very kind words and introduction. I have in my memory a great moment of my personal career and path, which was not so far from Washington, in Gaithersburg, Maryland, where I was indeed at the National Institute for Standards and Technologies, dealing at that time with laser optics, and that was a great moment, and intellectually speaking, that is certainly extremely stimulating. I don't pretend anymore to be able to say you and to tell you what I was working on. It's already 25 years ago. But I think that the transition that we are living here in Poland intellectually also is extremely challenging. And let me recall maybe three challenges or three dependencies we started with in this transition. And you know perfectly well, Ambassador, Poland and our region. So you know how difficult it was in the beginning of 90s, where we started, in fact, with, first of all, being completely a monoculture on coal. You said 74%, but at that time it was 97%. And we were the only country of the Soviet bloc which was not, for a reason I ignore, allowed to develop any other source of energy. So compared with Czechoslovakia, Ukraine, Lithuania, you name any Central European countries, and then everybody has a diversified mix, including nuclear for many countries. Not the case of Poland. So first dependency, monoculture. Second dependency, gas for heating purposes, 100% dependency from Russia. So it's completely unimaginable to increase this dependence, taking into account our history in the 90s or 2000s, to move from coal to gas, because no other alternative road physically available. And then last but not least, an extremely complicated economic transition at the beginning, with rising costs of energy, with a lot of industries going down, and a big share of energy costs in our households' incomes. And it simply exploded. And still today, we are, in terms of share of the cost of energy in households' income, we are at the level twice as high as our neighbor Germany. So an average Polish household pays 10% of its revenue for energy-related expenses, compared with Germany, where it's rather 5%. So a limited scope also financially for the society to invest in new additional directions and different technologies. But here we are in 2020, Ambassador, and the world is different. And right now we can seize the opportunity of new technologies and declining cost of renewables. Also enormous perspectives in terms of storage of energy, in terms of lithium-ion batteries, in terms of new sectors which are being electrified, with transport being one of them. And then also the fact that we have this inherited system which is going to be increasingly obsolete. So we need to invest somehow. And on top of that, raising awareness of my fellow citizens that after this 30 years of rapid economic development of Poland, it's time right now to increase the standard of living, and in particular to have a better air quality. So environmental and climate awareness is rising in my country. And this is also pushing politics to be more ambitious. And this is happening right now as we are speaking at really an extremely fast speed. And we are gaining a momentum here in Poland for a quite unprecedented energy transition.
What technologies do you see as being the prime vehicles? I would think, I don't know that that solar, how big solar would be in Poland. I mean, you're not exactly a tropical country with a lot of sun. I could imagine wind being a major source. Where do you see the future? What future technologies do you see?
Well, we have just celebrated in June 10,000 megawatts of installed capacity in renewables, and indeed majority of it is coming from wind. But it's in a system of 45,000 megawatts of installed capacity. You can see that nearly 1/4 is already renewable, turned to renewable. But we indeed see a lot of space for development in this sector, and we basically three pillars for the development in coming 20 years of a new zero-emission energy system. First of all is wind, but rather offshore. We have an excellent potential at the Baltic Sea, and Poland gets the lion's share of this potential at the Baltic Sea seashore. and wind offshore is a new technology which is rising. And Poland is, with a lot of talented people and skilled companies, probably the only country in Europe which has already a well-developed value chain in terms of wind offshore and not a single windmill in the sea. So that's an interesting paradox, and we want to bet on this technology, as it is providing also to be much more available than wind onshore. So we want to have a stable production of electricity, and it's only possible. Then dispersed energy systems, we will probably reach 1 million prosumers by 2030. We already have more than 300,000 people who are at the same time producing and consuming electricity, and behind this boom, photovoltaics. We are not indeed a tropical country, but photovoltaics are skyrocketing, especially this year, despite COVID. We accumulated the first 1,000 megawatts in photovoltaics in 8 years. The last 1,000 megawatts took us 8 months. And we added more than 150,000 households this year, this COVID year, with rooftops PVs, because people are interested in new technologies and because there is a rising awareness and falling cost. But that's, of course, a challenge, and we can come back to it in terms of intermittency, how we can manage this in terms of buffering the system when the sun is not shining and the wind is not blowing. And last but not least, but extremely important in terms of also industrial strategy of this energy transition, is the question of nuclear energy. We see that it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, as IPCC panel says, to reach ambitious climate goals without nuclear. So nuclear must be somehow in the picture. Reactors will be built in Poland starting from 2033 with the capacity of 6,000 to 9,000 megawatts of installed capacity. And this will provide stable, secured sources of energy for our industry, as Poland is growing in terms of industry share. And we expect that despite COVID, this trend can still continue.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned nuclear. In fact, I was going to ask you about that. I agree with you that it's going to be necessary. And I think I've seen that you've just signed an understanding with the United States on nuclear cooperation. Perhaps you could briefly comment on that, and also how you see new nuclear technologies in Poland, like small modular reactors or other advanced nuclear technologies.
Thank you very much. We have indeed signed an agreement with our American partners regarding a cooperation in the field of nuclear. And why is it so important? Because you cannot anymore build nuclear alone. So it's an increasingly global business, and only a couple of countries have enough capacities to tackle this challenge. And when we are speaking about competences, capacities, US of course has it, but its own industry is not anymore producing nuclear for the purposes of a domestic market. And I think in this regard, it might be an opportunity for us to link ourselves. We have hundreds of companies working in the nuclear energy field all over the world, again, not in Poland. So the value chain, even if it's not that much developed, of course, as the one behind giants, there is some kind of initial step. And we might combine our capacities in order to build nuclear in Poland. But for us, 20 years' time that we need to develop to build a new zero-emission system, which will be of the size of the magnitude of the existing conventional one, is a challenge which requires urgency and which requires speed. So we must bet on technologies which are mature enough. So this is why we will go for generation 3 or 3 plus proven technologies, where we are sure that by starting the process this year, choosing the technology next year, choosing the location in 2 years, because that's an ambitious agenda that we have foreseen, starting the construction in 2026, then we are able to deliver in 2033 the first nuclear power unit. If not, our energy transition will be at risk. So we must go for stable and secured technology. But of course, when you ask about nuclear opens new opportunities in terms of small modular reactors, in terms of different other ways of producing not only electricity, but also heat. We have high temperature gas-cooled reactors, which are extremely interesting. And we want also to move in this direction. But certainly the time scale is different, and also the objective is different. It is to innovate, to prepare the next wave, but not to satisfy the existing purpose of the transition, as it is extremely urgent again.
Another area to talk about, sort of the elephant in the room, is gas. And there are many in Europe, a lot of people in Europe who want to move away from gas as quickly as possible. Others see gas as a necessary part of the energy transition. Certainly converting from coal to gas will be essential in Poland. How do you see, for the mid, even long term, the importance of gas as part of your as part of your energy transition?
Well, indeed, Ambassador, as you said, in Europe, there is a big discussion regarding the role of gas and whether, yes or not, we should allow financing of new gas investments. But let's be pragmatic. Here in Poland, in order to stabilize intermittency of renewables, you don't have that much alternative than gas. We are not a country with Alps or with big mountains, so that we can buffer some kind of intermittency with hydropower. So we need to use gas in this regard. An average PV panel in Poland works 1,100 hours yearly. Out of 8,760 hours yearly, you see how big is the scope to be filled. And even if we increase and find ways to store electricity in different manners, or energy as heat, still we will need gas as a regulatory fuel. And second, Poland has this particularity, you mentioned it, Ambassador, not being a tropical country. And majority of the costs which is incurred by Polish households do not go, in fact, to electricity, but to heat. 60% of invoices is being paid in order to heat our houses. And still we have quite developed heating systems, centrally planned heating systems, with thousands of kilometers of heat pipes. But these systems are working right now with quite obsolete coal power plants. If we want to transit to a new fuel, then necessarily we must increase the share of gas in our energy mix. There is no other technically viable, economically viable alternative for now. So in Polish energy mix, the reality is that gas will be increasing its share in the coming years. And this is why the cooperation with US on LNG is so important. And we have created our first LNG gas terminal in Świnoujście, which is one of the best fields within European Union. It's the only one and the biggest one in the Baltic Sea. It's the gate for Central Europe. But we are also building Baltic Pipe, which is linking Polish shore with Denmark and with Norwegian shelf in order to get alternative source of gas. So this is answering the question from the beginning on our dependency on gas provision. We are working in order to make sure that this increase of the share of gas in Polish energy system will be safe and will be or it will be possible to get this gas from alternative sources and directions from the previous one. And maybe last but not least, if you allow, we want also to be the gate for energy security for Central Europe. So this is why we are building interconnectors to our neighbors, Lithuania, Slovakia, in order to share this energy security provided with alternative sources of gas supply with our region.
Right, and in that context, Poland has been a prime supporter of the 3 Seas initiative, and to do just that, and is also, I think, by far the largest contributor of the Central and Eastern European countries to the 3 Seas Investment Fund. And I also think Poland has shown tremendous foresight in doing what you said is already being done, the Baltic-Norway pipeline, new LNG facilities, and reducing any dependence at all, really, on Russian gas, whether or not there's a Nord Stream 2. So that certainly, I think, deserves, Poland deserves a lot of credit for how it's dealt with the gas issue. Let me just say before going to the next question, which we'll get to audience questions soon, there is a Q&A function on the Zoom screen. I have not looked at the questions yet. I'm going to have to reach over to look at them at some point, but there already, I see that there is something like 4 in that on that icon. And so if you have questions, you can put it there. Let me ask you a little bit of a more controversial question. You've had your problems, Poland has had its problems with Brussels. You opposed the 2050 carbon neutrality agreement of last December. Poland has at least a temporary exemption from that. At some point, that's gonna have to be dealt with. There are issues with Brussels on things like rule of law, and I don't expect you to get into the merits of that, but there are certainly issues with Brussels on that, and possible conditionality with respect to support from Brussels on various projects and on the recovery plan and so forth. How do you see that, and how do you see these issues affecting, if at all, what you're trying to do in your job as Minister of Climate and the Environment?
Well, maybe let me refer to the conclusions of the European Council in December 2019, so 1 year ago, when still 28 were sitting at the table. Great Britain was part of the European Union. And at that time, we agreed, and European Council agreed, that we go for climate neutrality at the EU level for 2050. And that's a common agreement among all member states. But we also acknowledge that one member state, and there's no mystery that it is the case of my country, has a very different starting point. And so when we are speaking about getting to the final stage, we need to make sure that this course is simply fair, and that a country which is having a different starting point will be given additional room and will also benefit from additional solidarity. And that was shared by 27 others. So we, in fact, the conclusions that we reached at the European Council in December were unanimous conclusions about where we go as European Union for climate neutrality by 2050, with Poland doing its utmost share to reach this goal. But 27 recognizing that one country with, as you said, 76% of the share of coal, which is quite exceptional within European Union, taking into account also the size of our economy and the endowment in capital, we need really to have some kind of different path leading to the same objective, but without being able to say, yes, indeed, as we will be able to reach it on the country basis. But since then, we have proposed, and I have put on the table, our energy policy, which foresees that by 2040, the share of coal in the Polish energy mix will decline, and will decline to up to 11%. The scenarios that I have presented is between 11 and 28% by 2040, from 76% right now. So it's quite an unprecedented change, which is right now being engaged in Poland, and this is also recognized by our partners. We were having a discussion on the budgetary issue, and I don't know whether you have followed, Ambassador. We have discussed about the creation of a dedicated fund for coal-dependent regions, Just Transition Fund. And we were advocating for this fund to be at the level of ambition, and also taking into account the fact that nobody should be left behind in this ambitious industrial transformation. And the European Commission shared this ambition with us. And the Just Transition Fund was proposed to be at a quite significant substantive level. But then in July this year, we had a very difficult budgetary discussion at the European Council, which divided by half, in fact, this Just Transition Fund. And when I'm speaking of budget, I know how difficult it is, how engaging it is, but also how big are the consequences of such a decision for next 10 years for European Union. So there are lots of ups and downs, there are lots of discussions, and I'm confident that in the spirit of compromise, heads of states and governments will be working in order to find a solution, because we need, as Europe, as European Union, we need funds in order to tackle the post-COVID recovery, but we need also to have to acknowledge that there are challenges, common challenges, which we can solve with this budget, which is greening our economy and making it more sustainable. And that's a common challenge. And we cannot go alone for climate neutrality by 2050. And it's not even the case if we go alone as European Union, because in any case, emissions will not disappear. So it must be a movement in solidarity among many member states. And I'm confident that we will be able to find a way through this difficult discussion as well.
And also, I take it, are you comfortable that you'll get through whatever conditionality issues there might be?
Well, certainly, this is a complicated discussion, and in July we had this discussion regarding rebates from some of the member states, and now we are approaching to the European Council in December, and I hope that heads of states and among heads of states this compromise can be found and consensus can be built.
Good. On the coal issue, and then I'll go to the questions. That, you know, as I understand it, the union and mining companies have agreed to be out of coal by 2049. Now that seems like a long time, and I'll be 104 years old in 2049. So it does seem like a long time. But when I look back 29 years, which is pretty close to when I first, in a third career, started in the government, that seems like a short time ago. So in a lot of ways, it's not long between now and then. Do you feel that you'll be able, from what you've been talking about, that you can make that transition? There are an awful lot of coal miners in Poland who are going to have to be taken care of. How confident are you that you can come to solutions that will protect their interests?
Well, that's an extremely challenging transition that we are facing. At the beginning of the 90s, we had 400,000 miners in Poland. When I took the office 5 years ago as Vice Minister of Energy responsible for innovation, there were 100,000. Now, if I recall correctly, it's around 80,000 people working in the mining industry in Poland. And of course, this workforce is very much concentrated in Silesia. So that is a big challenge in terms of social acceptance. And we have the experience of past transitions in this regard, which were somehow happened overnight. When you visit Silesia, I would encourage you to visit a couple of cities which are twin cities, one close to the other. And I have in my journey visited Katowice and Bytom. In Bytom, in the middle of 90s, lots of mines were closed in a very short lapse of time. And this created a lot of unemployment. And unluckily, 25 years later, 2020 to today, still this shock can be seen in the unemployment numbers. The unemployment in Bytom is 3 times higher than in the city, which is just a neighbor city, which is Katowice. So if you somehow destabilize this social system overnight, and if the transition is not smooth, if there are no conditions to create new jobs, new sectors of activities, if there is not an ecosystem which supports new activities, then we might have this effect as in Bytom of long-lasting unemployment and social exclusion. So this is why our plan is for energy policy lasts for 20 years. We have signed a framework agreement with trade unions from the mining company PGG. Indeed, as you said, for the first time in Poland ever, speaking about phasing out of coal and closing mines. 2049 may seem far away, but what is essential is that we are able to make this transition in a manner which will preserve economic potential of people, which would be socially acceptable, and to be able in parallel to create new sectors of activities. So this is why in the coming years, it will be increasingly important not only to discuss about how to improve our climate policy and ambition, but how to create, how to generate out of this ambition new jobs, new sectors of activities, which will be comparable in size to the previous fossil-dependent sectors. In my case, in the case of Poland, we estimated this potential to be at the level of 300,000 jobs in the coming 20 years. So that's a job-rich transition. And for this transition, we need capital, because Poland, for historical reason, is still a country with less endowment in capital, or this is an extremely capital-intensive revolution which is ahead of us. So we are working on it. And I think what is extremely important from the lessons learned from the first transitions that we had during this 20 years, 30 last years since 1989, is that we need to smoothen this process and to plan this process. And if we do it like that, then we will have it right.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. These are all great answers to all of the questions. We have a host of really good questions on our quick Q&A icon. And you did mention investment, which raises one question that was brought by Neil Brown, who is raised concern about what may be perceived as the Polandization of energy assets, and whether and how much room there might be for foreign investment in Poland. And how would you respond to that?
Well, I see that lots of new opportunities are being seized by all kinds of companies. And when you look at wind offshore, you see Polish companies, PGE, Orlen, partnering with others and on equal foot basis. So I don't see this risk. On the contrary, there is a room for a lot of partnership in this new energy field. Nuclear is also such a field where, par excellence, if I may say, we will go for a global partnership with American companies, European companies, Japanese companies, Korean companies. This is open for collaboration. And last but not least, we have right now a bottom-up revolution here in Poland in terms of new sources of energy. Photovoltaics, as I said, is skyrocketing, and this opens also completely new perspectives for new players. And I think that the market proves to be quite effective in this regard in simply providing opportunities for new players. And we have a couple of them raising from really very small share in the market to quite substantial players.
Thank you. I'm going to go to a question that our friend, I think a friend of yours as well, Andras Shemini, raises. He asks the question about John Kerry. I think we're all excited. Many of us are excited here that John Kerry is going to be our climate envoy with cabinet status and on the National Security Council. What will be your message to him on how we can cooperate? Also with respect to questions that we need to be involved with, certainly on the US side, on what to do about methane emissions, how to get appropriate standards with respect to methane emissions that are objective and transparent and non-discriminatory.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that John Kerry is a great leader and great envoy for climate. I had the pleasure to meet with him when I was campaigning for COP24. And that's a great opportunity that we see right now in terms of alignment between European Union, US, Japan, and South Korea in terms of common challenge of reaching climate neutrality by mid-century. And this is also the case for China, which declared, and I think many observers were quite surprised with this announcement, carbon neutrality by 2060. So we have an enormous political engagement at the major poles of economic activity in the world. And we have right now to find the way through. And this question of how to do it will be crucial. And this is why I think that also OECD, gathering like-minded countries and providing policy-based evidence might be helpful in this regard to guide our countries. But if you ask me concretely, President-elect Biden declared $400 billion for the purpose of research and development in the climate policy. A lot of money is being right now declared within European Union, as well as in Asian OECD countries. How do we make sure that these big funds going for innovation and research and development for climate-friendly technologies is properly coordinated and synchronized among us, so that we help each other, we complement each other rather than cannibalize the resources? That would be an area of cooperation. Then many are speaking about trade. Carbon border adjustment mechanism is planned in European Union to be introduced for pilot sectors starting from mid of the next year. President-elect Joe Biden again is speaking about carbon border adjustment mechanism. How to fit this kind of mechanism within open and transparent trade markets. How to make sure that we can recover from COVID-19 in terms of trade flows by making at the same time an effort to make these exchanges more climate friendly. This will be the challenges on which John Kerry certainly will be working together with other partners. And that could be also discussed at COP26 in Glasgow. And I'm working hand in hand with Alok Sharma, who is president of COP26, myself being president of COP24. We try to support him in building compromises and setting the scene also among UN countries to fight climate change. And in this regard, the input of US and in particular from John Kerry will be absolutely crucial.
Thank you. Let me turn to a question from Brian Kelly from Simpro. And there may be some connected questions that I'll take afterwards from Esther Badiola from the European Investment Bank and others. He's asking how about green financing rules coming up from the EU and how green financing rules will affect your energy transition from coal to gas and other alternatives. Maybe I'll take two at a time. And also from Esther Badiola, and there was also another question from somebody else on energy efficiency and how important energy efficiency will be in the transition, and also whether, for example, the 3Cs investment fund will be able to invest in that area. So basically, your views on green financing, your views on the 3Cs investment fund as to energy efficiency projects or other environmental projects.
Thank you very much. Well, indeed, in Brussels, we are discussing so-called taxonomy, and this defines what are possible fields where finance can go in order to be defined as sustainable. And on this topic, we have a subject of discontent with the Commission, saying that, in our opinion, it is extremely complicated, if not impossible, to orchestrate the transition in the heating sector without taking on board gas investments. And when we see a country like Poland, where we have 500 central heating systems which are coal-based, and we need to turn them gas, then we understand that we need to provide gas infrastructure to these systems and to build new plants. And making sure that gas can be financed under this sustainability umbrella during this transitory period is absolutely essential for the quality of air and for availability of technologies for this energy transition here in Poland. Of course, there is also a discussion regarding to what extent this money can finance such projects as nuclear. And that's another discussion which is which is extremely complex. But going for energy efficiency, well, we understood here in Poland that if we want to tackle the issue of energy transition and of clean air, then we must tackle the question of individual heating sources. So this is why we proposed 18 months ago the Clean Air Program with a budget of 25 billion euros for the coming 10 years, where the objective is to modernize 3 million individual houses and to change from coal-based heaters to ecological heaters, but at the same time to decrease the consumption of electricity. This is why this is an enormous thermo-insulation project, increasing energy efficiency of households in Poland. So energy efficiency must be at the heart of this energy transition, and especially right now, when we are speaking of post-COVID recovery, what kind of impulses can be given in a productive manner to our economy, to our societies. And I think that going for energy efficiency is absolutely essential. So it will stay at the heart of climate transition here in Poland. and certainly also in Europe. But we must still remember that an average household in Poland still consumes much less electricity than an average household in Western Europe. So the scope for maneuver, developing at the same time the economy and rising living standards is more limited than with our Western partners.
Okay, good. There have also been a couple of questions on hydrogen. One question from our senior fellow, Stephen Green, who also doubles as my cousin. He was asking about hydrogen, also about stranded assets. As you make investments, for example, in LNG terminals and looking at where gas may be going in the future, and I think you seem very positive about gas, whether you have any concern about stranded assets, that and the role of hydrogen.
In our energy policy, we have an objective of going for 10% of our gas pipelines to be adapted for decarbonized gases, such as hydrogen, by 2030. So we take this challenge on board. We understand that we need also to open our gas pipelines to decarbonized gases. It will be as much a technical challenge as economical, in order to make sure that hydrogen can play economically the role of the fuel of the future. So there is a lot to do, but we are doing. We are working on our hydrogen strategy. Two basic assumptions, if you allow. 2,000 megawatts of installed capacity in electrolyzers by 2030. So we take again this as a challenge, as an opportunity, that a rising share of renewables in Poland, especially in the north of the countries with wind offshore, will sometimes produce more electricity than in fact our system is able to consume. And then we will store this in the form of hydrogen. But the second thing is we are in fact working to increase our production capacities in the north of Poland, with wind offshore, with nuclear, which will be located at the seashore for the first nuclear power plant, the most probably. And then we have all our industrial consumption, which is happening in the south of the country. So one of the objectives that we take on board with our new hydrogen strategy is to evaluate, analyze a hydrogen highway north-south, which could be transporting from north hydrogen to south for the consumption. So we are working on it, and I think it's not yet a problem of stranded assets. And we should make sure everything that's possible in order to smoothly again make the transition with existing energy systems, especially gas pipelines, to adapt them to a growing share of decarbonized gases. But it will not happen overnight, and it will be quite a gradual process.
You know, you may be seeing me on the screen, literally scrolling down all these incredible questions, but there are too many of them, frankly. There are at least three more that I would like to get to, as we have another 7 or 8 minutes. Maybe we'll have time for more. Anna Gumbau is asking about the negotiations with the council next week, and whether there's any chance that Poland will be able to agree to a 55% reduction in emissions by 2030, and how do you intend to deal with that issue?
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, we are working with our partners, and we are working in order to make sure that an objective is accompanied by means to reach this objective. So this is why what is extremely important for us is the enabling framework. It's not only a question of making another objective, and we worked a lot to make sure that the 40% reduction target by 2030 is feasible. And we defined only for the case of Poland 240 billion euros of investments which would be necessary to get there. That's quite a lot for our energy system. Now raising this target to 55%, it's quite a challenge, and it's quite a challenge in a number of issues. First of all, when you read the impact assessment which was produced by the European Commission, you see that going from 50% target to 55% target actually cuts by half the workforce in the mining sector within European Union. And when you understand that you start from a baseline which is already quite low, and that majority of this workforce is situated in Poland, then you understand also that it will bring additional, quite important social impact in the country like Poland. And we must somehow, as I said, in the spirit of solidarity, in the spirit of just transition, be able to smoothen this transition and make it socially and economically feasible. But that's also the question of energy poverty. We see the impact on our households of rising energy prices. And we must make sure that it will not increase the energy poverty. Still, an average Pole earns half or even 1/3, depending on sectors, compared with an average German. Or a photovoltaic panel, a windmill, or an electric car costs on the single market the same. So we must take on board this difference in endowment in capital between Central European countries, Poland being the biggest out of them, with our Western counterparts. Historically, we have less capital, and also people are earning less money. So this transition needs to be tackled with much more precautions. And this is why when we are speaking about European Council next week, we insist on making sure that we have this enabling framework where we will not only be asking the question of what is the target, but how to achieve this target and how to make sure that this target is realistic in given conditions of our countries.
That leads, which leads to a question from, these are all great answers, by the way, leads to a question from Cecily Tenfjord, who's a member of the Swedish Parliament, who's in the audience, who's asking about subsidization. How much subsidization is going to be necessary to meet all of the goals that you need to achieve?
I'm not sure I get the point. Subsidization in terms of which sectors and in terms of what purpose?
Well, I'll read the question. She welcomes the clear message that Poland is about to leave its coal dependency and welcomes all your plans in the neighborhood on interconnectors, etc. My question is, how do you see these huge investments from an economic perspective? Will the new Polish energy system manage economically on its own, or will it be dependent on state subsidies?
Well,
and I had the name wrong. It's Cecily Tofby. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you very much. I think it's not possible to run a system on the basis of subsidies. Subsidies are here to help transition, are here to smoothen a transition, engage a new dynamic. But it would be completely unsustainable to run a system in the long run with a persistent level of subsidies. The objective, on the contrary, is that market can play this role. And I think in this regard, within European Union, yes, we have accumulated a lot of different layers of support schemes, grid payments, etc. And this is quite a challenge in order to come back to a level playing field in which all technologies will be able to compete one with the other. But we are living through a transitory period. And of course, the objective is not to have subsidies in the long run. It would not make any sense, in my opinion.
The next question, and it may be, we'll see if we have time for any more afterwards. We're getting close to closing time. You have, by the way, been been remarkable in answering thoroughly so many questions, like one after another. It's been very impressive. But I do have a question from Fred Hutchison from LNG Allies. Before asking you the question, I would also mention that Assistant Secretary of Energy Ted Garish, who I'm sure you've met, is also in the audience, and I'm sure would be also interested in this question. And that is, what about PTEC, the Partnership for Transatlantic Energy Cooperation that the Department of Energy has set up over the past few years? I might also ask about the 3Cs initiative. Is this, I think I can say almost for certain that the new administration will support the 3Cs initiative. I'm not sure there's been a whole lot of discussion about PTEC, but how do you see that? And do you think, of course, I'll ask, both of these programs deserve the continued support of the new administration?
Well, first of all, let me send my greetings to Fred Hutchinson and to Ted Garish, both great friends, and we worked a lot in the last years to make sure that we can diversify our sources of supply, and in terms of gas, but also in terms of nuclear. And I'm convinced that it's in the interest of US and of Poland to continue these efforts because it is providing an additional source of energy in our region, whether we are speaking about LNG or whether we are speaking about nuclear. And this opens a transatlantic dimension of our cooperation. It gives body also to the links which are strong between our countries. And I hope that we can build on what has been achieved until now, and that we can move further with 3C initiatives, with initiatives like PTEC, because it serves the benefit of our collaboration. So how to do it in practice? We have to provide finances, we have to provide funding. So this is why we are working right now here in Poland very extensively on funding the 3Cs initiative in order to give concrete substance to this ambition of connecting Central European countries around the notion of energy security. I think we are on a good path, we are on a good way, and although lots remains to be done still.
Well, thank you. I think unfortunately we are at our close. I think we could be continuing this discussion for the next hour. And again, I repeat, I think you've answered, even though we didn't get to all the questions, one way or another. I think you dealt with almost everything that anybody could possibly have raised. And it's really been quite a tour de force on your part. And I've moderated a lot of panels, and I'm not sure I've ever had one where there've been able to get in so many questions with so many good answers, just boom, 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 one after another. You've just done an incredible job, and I hope we'll be having more of these sessions. And I want to thank everybody for joining this discussion, of course, especially you, and looking forward to hosting you in further events. I will say an advertisement. Please join us this afternoon for a Global Energy Center event. And I'm reading this now, so excuse my reading it. Energy Source Innovation Stream at 12 p.m., so it's in an hour, featuring Wade Bitteroff, the founder of Energy and Sustainability Practice at Plug and Play, who will discuss how the platform supports startup development through accelerator programs, corporate innovation services, and in-house venture capital. I might mention to those who are listening, this is about our 34th Energy Innovation Stream session. they're half-hour sessions talking about more technical things, and they're just really fantastic. I also want to thank everyone who's helped to make this event possible. And I'm going to go through the names because I'm sometimes negligent in doing so. Lauren Holland, Roger Morales, Hunter Cornfield, our intern, Jennifer Gordon, and Olga Kokova from our center. And very grateful to our colleagues at the Polish Embassy who have facilitated the event, especially Małgorzata Groman, who has been a true friend of the Atlantic Council and has participated in so many of our events. This presentation is available on our website, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So share it with your colleagues. I think it's been a hugely valuable event and has given us, I think, a real understanding of what's happening in Poland. And, sometimes, you read when you just read the press and whatever, you get different views and so on. But you have such an appreciation for the complexity, Mr. Minister, and I think you explained it tremendously well. So thanks again, and until next time.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.